Hello, this is Sonia from An Enthusiastic Reader. I am glad to see you here. Today. I am here to do a tag. I'm doing the Midyear Freakout tag. I did this tag probably 3 years ago, back in the before times. It was one of my favorite tags. I love it when people do it, and so I thought I'd just kind of jump on the bandwagon and get right into it while everyone wants to watch these videos, while it's timely. So let's just get started. Prompt number 1, the best book you have read so far this year. I've read a bunch of really great books. I think I have 5 on my best of 2022 list so far. But my favorite reading experience and favorite book so far is the novel The Dickens Boy by Thomas Keaneally. This is the fictionalized version of Charles Dickinson's son, named Edward, and they call him Plorn as his nickname. It sounds very Dickensian, doesn't it? And he is encouraged, or maybe even forced by his father, to move to Australia. He's one of the youngest sons to make his fortune in sheep ranching in Australia. So it's funny, it's very witty, and I would say that the character that is written by Keaneally is very Dickensian, kind of David Copperfield-like, and he is he's like very brash at the beginning. Like he's only 16, so you got to give him some leeway to be wrong about things. And he also has this huge capacity to learn and grow and become a man. And so it's coming of age, fish out of water, delightfully written, full of very vivid characters like you would see in a Dickens novel. And I just really, really love the experience of reading this. I have not seen one other person read this book on my booktube channel, so I would encourage someone to read it because it was a really good experience. Number 2, best sequel you've read so far this year. I've only read 3 books that were like sequels, and one is the Maisie Dobbs. I started the Maisie Dobbs series, and I thought the first book was a little bit better than the second book, although I do plan to continue to go on with this series. So I'm going to say Payment in Blood by Elizabeth George, which I just read. These are the Detective Linley series, and there are like 30 books in this series. So that was one reason I was really drawn to it, is that there are so many books in the series. I can be reading through it for a very long time. These books are written in the 90s, I believe, and they are very dated in terms of the ways that we talk about women in fiction. And this was written by a woman, but I would say that the female characters so far, except for the main female character who is the assistant to Inspector Linley, are painted in very weird ways, and there are a lot of weird expectations. And in Payment in Blood, it's a mystery that takes place with a bunch of actors who are rehearsing for a play. And so there are so many motivations and secret relationships and all kinds of things that go on in detective novels like this. But some of the suppositions that are made by the detectives about, for instance, there is a character who slept with another character the night of the murder, and they are talking about what bedclothes she decided to go to bed in, because she went to bed in a man's pajama top, and Inspector Linley was supposing that she couldn't have been expecting to have a guest, because who would be in a man's pajama top instead of in lingerie if they were awaiting a seduction? I mean, that kind of thing about characters all the time. This is not a one-off. And so in a way, it's kind of amusing to read these books and kind of pick apart and hope that over the course of 30 books or whatever, including books that are written right now, that there has been a progression in ideas about men and women and gender and all of those things that were it's like watching Friends, and there are so many like cringe-worthy jokes in Friends now that it's basically unwatchable because of the ways that they made fun of gay characters and fat characters, etc. So I'm kind of comparing the two phenomenon. the ideas we had in the 90s are not the ideas that we often have today. If my camera is bouncing around a lot, I'm on an outdoor patio table and I can see my phone moving around a little bit, so sorry about that. Okay, number 3, new release you haven't read yet from this year, but you want to. The answers I have for this question are actually books that haven't come out yet. And one is Lucy by the Sea by Elizabeth Strout, which is the continuation of the Lucy Barton series. And I've talked a lot about this. I'm sure you do not need to hear me talk about this again. The other one is The Book of Goose by Yiyun Lee, and it is a haunting story of friendship, art, exploitation, and memory. So I do believe it takes place in Europe and not in China. It doesn't seem to have any Chinese setting, at least. So I'm not sure at all what it's about, but I am, just based on that description, I am definitely wanting to read that. Okay, number 4, most anticipated release for the second half of 2022. I am very excited that there is a new Kate Atkinson novel coming out in September. It is called Shrines of Gaiety, and it says that it is a window into a vanished world. I do believe it takes place between World War I and World War II, and it is slyly funny, brilliantly observant, and ingeniously plotted. I mean, you can't go wrong with that. I love Kate Atkinson. Life After Life is one of my top 5 novels of all time, and I can't wait to see what she has come up with for this next novel. Number 5, biggest disappointment of the year. I did not really like the final revival of Opal and Nev by Donnie Walton. I thought the writing was good, but I thought it was unnecessarily padded with a lot of extraneous stuff, and it could have been more, and it just wasn't enough for me. Number 6, biggest surprise of the year. My biggest surprise is how much I actually loved Milkman by Anna Burns. So many of my booktube and book friends across all platforms loved Milkman, and for some reason I just kept putting it off, and I guess I'm glad I put it off because it seemed to be the perfect time for me to read it this year. I loved it. I loved the writing. I love the way that the main character actually comes up with ways to code what she's saying in her narrative, and the way that there were at least 2 characters named Milkman in the story, and there was just so much packed into this beautiful and funny and terrifying novel that was set during the Troubles in Northern Ireland. Number 7, favorite new author. I don't have a good answer for this. I looked through all the books I read. I read a lot of books that I've read the authors before, and yeah, nothing has really jumped out at me, but I'm still waiting, and maybe in the second half of the year I will get a favorite new author. Number 8, newest fictional crush. No, I think all my fictional crushes might be for characters that appear in novels that were written in the 1800s. So I really can't think of a lot of no modernist heroes for me or crushes for me. So I would just stick with a very cozy and familiar world of the novels that were written in the 1800s all the way through the century. I know that's kind of a cop-out answer, but I just don't have a good answer for it. Number 9, newest favorite character, back from the book The Dickens Boy by Thomas Keaneally, is, his full name is Edward Bullier Lytton Dickens, and that's because he was named after all of Dickens's writer friends, and he was named after all of Dickens' writer friends, but they called him Plorn, Plorn, and I love that character. He was very, as I had already talked about too much, I loved the whole sensibility of this character. Number 10, book that made you cry this year. I cry all the time when I'm reading books. It's ridiculous, or when I'm watching TV, whatever, but the most recent one was The Sentence by Louise Erdrich. There was some stuff that happened near the end of the book that just really kind of tore me up, and I haven't talked at all about reading this. I know a lot of people have already read it. I'm a little bit late to the party, but that was definitely a 5-star book for me, and I hope to be talking about it in an upcoming Friday Reads at some point. Number 11, a book that made you happy this year. Aside from The Dickens Boy, I'm going to pass on this. I am not in a happy reading place. I've enjoyed a lot of different reading experiences that I've had, so I can't say that I haven't had enjoyment. But happiness, no, I haven't really, I can't think of anything that's made me actually really happy. That's dire. Number 12, the most beautiful book you've bought or received so far this year. I'm also going to pass on this. I looked through books that I've acquired and nothing jumps out at me on this either, but I still have hope for the second half of 2022. What do you need to read by the end of the year? Okay, at the beginning of this year, I created this list called 2022 TBR, which were books that I really wanted to prioritize. I've deleted some books from, or edited some books off the list that I just didn't feel as passionately about. But I think there were about 30 books on the initial list. I have read 9 of those books so far, and I think that's quite good. I hope to keep trying to dip my toe into this list for the rest of the year, but I definitely want to prioritize the rest of the Marilynne Robinson Gilead books, because Gilead was such an important book to me last year. I still think about it, and I think it was really deceptively written so that if you started it at the beginning and you didn't know the impact of what was going to come by the end, the relationship that the main character John Ames had with his friend's son Jack was, there was just nothing like it, and it was such a short book, but he really transformed the psychology of the story from the beginning to the end, and I just want more of that, so I want to read more of those books. I also have The Mirror and the Light by Hilary Mantel in a way to wrap up the Thomas Cromwell books, the Thomas Cromwell trilogy, which I am very fond of. So, okay, that's my mid-year Freakout tag, and I encourage you to do this or talk to me in the comments about some of the prompts if you don't make videos or you don't want to do the tag, but it's a kind of a good way to reflect on what I've accomplished so far up through this half of the year, and what goals I have for the second half. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.